I have a group of four at the top of mine right now.
Hmm.
It does not include the Empire, but does include the.
I'm open.
I'm open.
I'm open.
We're
Cambrock is
so
open.
open.
Welcome to the I'm Open podcast. We are down two people right now, but we're plus one much better person, we'll be honest. Um, we have no Andrew and no Ryan, although Andrew joined late, and we have Cam Brock with us, one of our all-time favorite guests, maybe our favorite guest. Are we allowed to pick favorites?
I'm your
Yeah,
favorite guest.
Yeah.
yeah.
Let's
We can
just say
pick, we can
that.
pick favorites.
I
Um,
am my favorite guest on your show. So
all right.
Yeah.
Well, that's one vote at least. We have a crazy tier talk episode to deal with because the Empire lost mainly.
Yeah.
Um, should I just throw it on the screen and we can get into it? Because we
Yeah,
have a
let's do
lot to
it.
cover. All right, awesome.
I have some thoughts.
And boom. All right, let's hear the thoughts.
My thoughts. Where do we want to start? Do we want to work our way from top down? Do we just want to take certain teams that played this weekend and kind of rearrange? What are you thinking?
I got to say that you are kind of a guest, and also you actually play in this league. So I think that however you think we should start is where we should start.
Why don't we go in order of games played this weekend and kind of just go like
Okay.
through like the teams that were on? And
Okay.
I'm pulling up the schedule right now to make sure I do this right. We had three games on Friday, I think, if I remember right. So
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Houston, Austin, Seattle, Oakland, and
yeah,
Salt Lake, San Diego, which is interesting.
yes. San Diego looked a lot better
Hmm.
against Salt Lake than I
Yeah.
anticipated. I know Salt Lake was down Grant Lindsley, they were down Will Selfridge. So that's nothing to like sneeze at, but there were moments in that game where Salt Lake kind of looked out of sorts and San Diego took advantage of it. I was very pleasantly surprised at the fight that San Diego put up. So I would move them all the way above Pittsburgh, who put up zero fight against Minnesota. Um, with no breaks. They I think only put up like what 11 goals. I would move them for sure. And honestly, I would have Pittsburgh below Montreal and then maybe Toronto kind of at the very bottom of D, which we'll get to Toronto here
Down
because
there. Okay.
yeah.
But yeah, I agree with you. I was really surprised by the Growlers game, especially after their week one game. I think
Mhm.
Ryan's line for this game was like 10 and a half for
Yeah.
the shred, which
Yeah.
at the time I thought made sense, but this was actually kind of an interesting game.
It's really crazy when you look at the stats too. So let me throw some stats out there that'll just like blow your mind because this was a 2 goal game, right? Salt Lake completed 200, or sorry, they attempted 220 more passes than San Diego did. They um had what 12 turnovers to the 16 of San Diego. Um, but like the real big difference was just it was in the deep game. I mean, San Diego threw 15 hucks, completed eight of them. So they weren't necessarily really efficient with their throwing. They only completed 91% of their passes. But when you're 8 for 15 on hucks and you're just getting it and going, um, I almost wonder if that's kind of a recipe for success against the Salt Lake O line. And when they turn it, just like turn and burn, baby. It definitely worked
Hmm.
in this game. So I don't know. I don't want to get too deep into analysis. I did that earlier today. So
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was impressed by San Diego. I didn't think I watched most of this game, and like while while they looked a lot better than the week before, I think they had like 28 turns or something in week one. Um, I still didn't think they looked like a great team. So the scoreline is really interesting to me that it was only
Yeah.
a 2 point game. But I mean, like huge props to them. Not they got doubled up week one to Seattle, who
Mhm.
we're gonna have to talk about, I guess. But yeah, to not just like give up on the season because your next week is in Salt Lake. So yeah, no, I was pretty impressed.
Yeah,
Spe-
I
Yeah.
was just gonna say I feel like part of why we were so off about how this game was gonna go is because we were also so off about where Seattle was like
Yeah, I
heading
think
into
so
the
too.
year because we assumed they were just gonna keep being like mediocre to bad. Um, and they were certainly better than mediocre, I would say. They played well, really well week one, and then they played a great game against Oakland. And then their game against Colorado was like they lost pretty handily, didn't they? But it was
It
not
was like a
like
4 point game.
embarrassing,
That was only
like
four. It
in
was
years
like
Yeah,
a
past.
one or two goal game at halftime.
yeah.
Granted, it
Hmm.
was on a bad call by the refs where they called a strip against Colorado on the end of quarter in the
Mm.
second quarter, and it was definitely the defense got it first. I mean, it's hard to say like live, but even live, I was like, I'm pretty sure the defender got that first. So, um, so let's go to Seattle. I actually was pretty high on them coming into the season. I thought they'd be the third best team in the division. They look like the third best team in the division. The Oakland score I think is a little deceiving because they only won by one, but they were in control of that game pretty much
Hmm.
start to finish.
Hmm.
I am unimpressed by Oakland so far. Um, I know they've been missing some guys who are still in college. Like they haven't had Dexter Clyburn. I don't think they've had Raquan Atkins in either game. Um,
No Keenan Lawrence, but he's not playing at all this year.
yeah, I've heard Keenan Lawrence. So he's like he's kind of in the Oscar situation where I think he's like under contract, but whether he plays or not, it's like really up
Yeah.
in the air. So the door is open, but let's just assume he's not playing. Um, but I think you have to jump Seattle, especially winning that on the road. Like you
Yeah.
have to jump Seattle above Oakland. I think Oakland and the Aviators probably both need to be moved down to C tier. Um,
Hmm.
and you could probably put, I mean, Oakland did beat them by a few goals. It was a home game. Aviators were down Brandon Van Dusen. Oakland was down a few guys too, but not anyone as important to their team as Brandon Van Dusen is to the Aviators. So I think
Yeah.
it's fine to keep them kind of next to each other.
Yeah. I'm with that. I was gonna initially be harsh on the Aviators as I was watching their game because against the Shred because it started out like 9-2 or something and I was just like, oh my God, what is happening? Um, but they made it respectable. I think they kind of planted themselves as like pretty mediocre from what I can tell.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you ignore the start of the game, they looked like a fine team. They took a little bit of time to get into the swing of it, but yeah, I think they brought it back. They only lost by three. They definitely didn't look like they had figured out what their offense or defense was going to look like, but I don't know, to go down 6 or 7 early to Salt Lake and to bring it back to a 3 point game. I think they won the second half. So I think that was pretty impressive. I think I would put them above Oakland, but I mean, they're kind of just like the same in my mind right now.
I mean, Oakland did beat them, so
Yeah,
I guess that's true.
I think you got to give it to him.
You're right.
Anyway, Andrew's here finally.
What's up?
Welcome, welcome.
What I miss?
um,
We
Uh,
bumped up
oh
Seattle.
Growlers
yeah.
moved up, Seattle moved up,
I think
Aviators and Spiders moved down.
also my highest engagement tweet on Twitter, or like since I made my 500th new Twitter account, is my tweet about Everest, the video of him giving the too small and then
Oh my
getting way
God.
too excited and jumping way too early for the subsequent hockey tip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was tough. That was tough to see. Well,
Poor
I
guy.
didn't say hello yet, but Sup, Cam? Thanks for filling in for Ryan.
Thanks
Appreciate
for
having
having
you.
me.
Of course. It's nice to have someone with some actual frisbee knowledge on this show for once.
And
Um,
podcasting experience.
and podcast. Yeah,
I am I'm all over the place now. This is like what
wearing a
this is
lot of
like my
hats.
fourth
You're
or
on
fifth time being on your podcast, I think at this point.
Mhm.
definitely regular, and you're all over Twitter now. This is a new Cam Brock. I'm not used to seeing this.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
wild.
trying to stay in my lane. Just frisbee, just poking fun at teams. I almost sent a what I thought would have been a great Philly Phoenix tweet earlier, and I've almost sent it like 10 times, and I just keep going, but do I want to?
Do you play them this year?
No, we've never played. Well, we played the Philly Spinners back in the day. We played them a couple of times in 2012, but we've never played the Phoenix since that franchise came into the league.
Gotcha. Sounds to me like you could just let the tweet rip and you won't have to face any consequences.
So what it was gonna be was the meme with the dog in an X-ray where they have the X-ray and you see the dogs in them. It was
Mhm.
gonna be that, except it was gonna be hot dogs. And it's gonna be like, oh, like those are the dogs that were in them this whole time. Like
That's pretty good.
because they looked so slow and out of shape during their game that I thought they must have just been loading up on some hot dogs, coney dogs, corn dogs, just all the other dogs, because they looked downright pathetic in that game. I mean, I don't really have a lot of nice things to say. You know what? I have a couple. Matt Hanna looked like he knew how to play frisbee and cared about being there, and looked like he was physically like ready to play. But man, there wasn't a lot of good things to say about that game. Just go back and watch it and just look at them when they're playing defense. They look uninterested in trying to get the disc. It's just like blows my mind. I'm like, I can't tell if you're this non-competitive or this out of shape, but there's like we're talking like in the middle of the second quarter, guys are like standing straight up, not even attempting to play defense, and it was just blowing my mind. I could not believe how just I don't know. It was like when things went bad, they just kind of rolled over and we're like, all right, I guess this point's done. It was sad to see from a Philly team that I think, if nothing else, has been scrappy and will fight to the end. And this looked like a team that was done fighting before they even started the game. So
You were high on them, and I believe you picked them
I
to
did.
win. I
I gave in to, they've had the talent and they've had the ability. They just haven't been able to put it all together for like a whole game, especially with DC. Like I think their last like 4 to 6 DC Breeze games have all been within 2 goals.
Yeah,
So it's
that's
like,
why I picked
Mhm.
Philly to cover the spread.
yeah,
Because for whatever reason, because I know like Philly can be. I mean, we clearly got the cold birds this week, but like they always bring the hot birds when it's a DC game, especially
yeah.
in Philly. I think back to like the Johnny Malk's buzzer beater. They always have to like scrap out a win. So I thought that would happen again. And I don't know what's going on this year with the league, but like pretty much the opposite of what I think is going to happen has happened so far. So I'm in shambles, honestly. I don't want to I think I kind of came in here and derailed whatever you guys were already talking about, but have we gone over Philly and like where they should be on
What
the
we're
tier
doing.
list
That's what we're
yet?
doing right this moment.
I want to know
Yeah.
your all's takes before I give my take.
Well, I watched the game, and you already were going in on their defense, and I completely agree. I want to talk about Philly's offense. I thought that it looked like it didn't have a real set game plan, and I
Yeah.
really didn't like how their handlers were moving around. And I really think Pollard was wildly misutilized when he was in the handler set with them. Um, and then, yeah, and when they would turn it over, the D line for the Breeze was just moving the disc around the field, looking like what any offense should look like. It was crazy. Yeah. And then I think Thorne had like 6 turnovers.
Wasn't good.
No, I mean, they were 0 for 1 on their D-line conversion. So the
I
Breeze
heard,
O-line played well, but
yeah.
they didn't play that well.
Uh, there was a former, I know somebody who's a former teammate of Jordan Ryan who's on that team. And, like 2 years ago, Jordan Ryan was like, dude, so good for Philly. Like you go look at his 2022 season, just look at the stats. They're just insane. Go watch the first game. I think it was their first game of the season. I think it was in Boston. And he was just, dude, he was money. Everything he did, everything he did was like gold in that game. And this person was like, dude, that guy right now can't guard, like couldn't guard a chair. Like I was like, "Ooh, that's like pretty
Woof.
harsh statement there." And they put Paul Owens on offense, which like this isn't a shot at Paul Owens, but it's just like he's been so good on their D line.
Mm-hmm.
And like I don't know what they thought he was going to offer their offensive line that they needed to move him over there because I don't know what he was supposed to offer them, but I didn't see like a spark from that move. I didn't think he was like terrible on offense, but I didn't see what the rationale was because they're giving up so much on defense. He's like arguably their best defender. And I don't see what he offers on offense that makes it worth putting him on that side of the disc. Like what that somebody else can't do for them. Maybe it's just that if they do turn it over, since they haven't been had a consistently good O line in terms of like hold percentage, maybe they're like, oh well, he can help us get the disc back when we turn it over. But I also don't think he moves the needle that much offensively. And then you're taking him away from your D line, which is honestly the only part of Philly that's been consistent has been their defensive pressure and their counterattack. And that just, you're taking one of your main pieces away from that. So it's weird.
So all that said, it sounds like we're low on Philly, possibly as we've ever been on this
Yeah,
podcast. I
certainly.
feel like is anyone going to fight to keep them in C tier?
It's crazy. Like they lost. I want to say they lost to like Pittsburgh last year, and this is a more disappointing game out of them.
They
I mean, they
beat
got
Pittsburgh by one.
Yeah, they barely
Okay,
beat
yeah,
them.
they beat them by 1.
And it was a game they were up by like 5 or 6 going into the fourth quarter, and they just hung on, if I remember correctly.
yeah. I mean, and this is like I don't know. You get doubled up at home or just about. Like I, I don't I don't know. I feel like I'm feeling like top of D because I look at kind of the other teams there and although I mean we'll talk about San Diego I guess because they had an interesting game but
No, you missed
I'm
that.
kind
We
of
talked about them.
okay you did so they're set in D.
Well, we moved them there. I don't know if they're set, but
Okay,
we raised them because they were an F.
right, okay, that makes sense. I mean I would have like a Philly top of D situation right now because DC's still a good team but like you move down a peg, you lose by that bad. Is anyone like arguing for further than that? Or
I think I would go further.
Bottom
yeah,
of D. Bottom of D.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. I
that's
I
crazy.
I see them much more in this Pittsburgh Toronto clump than in the Montreal San Diego clump.
I
Montreal lost 2 games to Boston and New York by a combined 4 goals.
Mhm.
Both
that's
on
a
the
good
road,
point.
both on the road without Jacob Brissett, who is going to be, he's one of their best throwers, the Team Canada player. Whereas Philly was at home against DC with almost their full lineup. I know Eric Nardelli wasn't there, but I don't think there was really any other notable absences. Meanwhile, DC was missing Rowan, Bloodgood, and Jasper Tom. Like those are three. Now, I will say I think their offense looks better without Rowan, but the other
Mhm.
two,
Hot takes.
I don't even think that's a hot take. Just like I think that's just observe watching frisbee. uh, they, but like Jasper Tom and like Dave Bloodgood, those guys are
Mhm.
ballers. And like two of their
Agreed.
best defensive players, and they've been both weeks without them so far, and they go into Philly and just like mollywop them. Ugh.
Yeah.
One other thing I wanted to say about Philly's offense is how many of their turnovers were essentially unforced. They had 20 turns total, 10 of which were from blocks, and there were so many throws
Mhm.
that were just like a little too far and it went out of bounds, or a little too high, or they just like spiked it. So many of those throws just having a more competent, more ready handling core, and like I don't know, maybe that's like 4 or 5 more goals in this game, which doesn't amount to much, but it's a lot less embarrassing.
Yeah, it was just it was just bad from I mean it was only 4-2 after one. Like it wasn't like they were getting crushed out the gate. You know, I thought they missed some opportunities in the first quarter, but I was like, you know what? Like they don't look like they're being played off the field. But by the middle of the second quarter, I was like, this is not going to end well.
Yeah, they only put up one more goal than Detroit this week.
I didn't know
Oh,
if Detroit was going to get to five. That was
God.
if you did you watch the Detroit game at all? Like any of you?
God,
No,
no.
sir.
No.
Okay. So I was playing WoW because I'm cool. And as I was playing on my second monitor, I had the game up because I was playing right around that time. And Detroit actually started with a hold and then had the disc four times on defense, one or two of which were like right outside of Chicago's end zone to go up 2-0. Like they had the opportunities. Of course, they didn't punch it in. But I was just like, what is going on? Like Chicago looked so terrible. E- Even it's like hard to know. Like Chicago really didn't look that good in this game, but it's like how much of that is them not being good and how much of that is just
Right.
like they're playing Detroit and it's just like you kind of
Yeah.
at some point you just kind of start like I guess I'll try this throw. Oh, I'll just do this thing
Hmm.
because we're up by 10 already.
The
It's like
suck
Austin against
breeds
all the
more
other
suck.
Texas teams.
Yeah. Speaking of Austin, another Friday night game. I have okay. I'm just gonna let you know. I have Austin. I have a group of four at the top of mine right now.
Hmm.
That does not include the Empire, but does include the Austin Soul.
Wow.
Oh yeah. I
Interesting.
Wow.
That's spicy.
I we my one of the thing I hated about Austin last year is they would play these games with Dallas and Houston and they'd win. They'd like be tied in the third quarter. And I'm like, what are you doing? This is stupid. And it just like spoke to me of like an immature team, like in terms of like where they needed to be developmentally. Like they should be crushing those teams, right? And they did that. Like the only thing they could have done in this game to be satisfactory was to crush Houston. They're at home, home opener. They're way more talented. And they did. Like they did exactly that. They almost doubled them up. They showed a lot more poise. They showed a lot more restraint, I felt like, with their shots that they took. And I was really impressed by that. And like that's the difference between a great team and a good team. A good team will let bad teams hang around from time to time and make those games close. A great team puts bad teams away and shows why they're the better team. And so I I was really impressed by that. They obviously won their division last year in the playoffs, and so I'm on the Austin Soul train right now.
Yeah.
That's
Can we
crazy.
just acknowledge that Sam quietly did this, but we just got rid of the Empire tier. And I don't remember the
Yeah.
last time our tier list didn't have an Empire tier.
It's
I
never
So
don't.
not had that, I think.
Yeah, I don't think it ever has.
pretty much maybe like the first time Ryan and I made a tier list, which
Yeah.
was like a horrendously wrong tier list.
Back when
That
you didn't know who KPS was.
well, Ryan didn't, I did. But
Yeah,
yeah,
wait.
like
Do we have no S tier?
Oh, that's what happened. We had an S tier and then I
we
see.
just changed it to Empire. Oh, do we want to have? I think we got to have an S tier, right?
Yeah, I
Like
Well,
think so.
I'll just put it in there and then we'll see.
who's if there's an S tier, who's in S tier? Let's do that.
You got to put Salt Lake in there, right? Like runner up last year.
Definitely.
They're the first team to 3 wins this year. Um,
Salt Lake looks nasty.
Yeah,
Yeah,
fully agree.
yeah.
uh,
Does anyone else belong in S, honestly? Like, has anyone else shown to be as dominant as Salt Lake?
I
No, I
would
don't. I don't know if enough teams have played enough, but
Yeah.
Carolina's the other one who is like a maybe
Yeah, I
for
would
me.
consider them.
I would say Carolina if you were going to pick another team to be up there for sure. I think I'm
They
still a little
beat
out on them because they did play a hustle team that was down Matt Smith and Jeremy Langdon, and especially Jeremy Langdon, and their win over the Empire looked so good. He was great in that game. So I think they Atlanta actually goes to Carolina again this week. Like we get to see that matchup again, and
Oh, I love
I'm
that.
I'm hoping when the lineups are released, the rosters are released, I'm hoping to see that Atlanta's taking everyone down there. So if they
Let's
are, we could see a wildly different game.
let's pop Carolina up to S tier so that we either look like super smart if Carolina beats the hustle again, or we just get way more movement in the tier list next week, and that's fun either way.
That's fair.
Yeah, I'm
I
with
I
that.
approve. Yeah.
And in the meantime, Hustle's got to move up. I mean, they have to, right? They knocked off
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
yeah,
Giants. They looked
Yeah.
great.
yeah.
They
They
looked
looked
dominant.
comfortably better than the Empire that whole game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Empire
moving
B
Carolina up
tier.
to S tier means that we could put the hustle at the end of
Whoa.
A.
I think Empire can still be an A, or I don't know. What do we think?
How
I
much
have
do we want
lots
to
of thoughts,
use
but I don't want
last
this to be a
season?
Cam Brock tier list. I want this to be a ringer the tier list.
I
I mean,
mean, Cam
Fair
Brock is
enough.
here.
if we are basing this off of strictly this season, they beat Montreal by 2,
Mm,
and then they lost to the hustle.
Hmm.
by what, 5, 20 to 15, right? So
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
it's
you're
One
not.
saying
thing
you're saying they beat a D tier team and lost to an A tier team. To me, that does not sound like an A tier team.
one thing I don't want to do on this tier list, I don't think we do this too much, but I think moving them from their own tier above everything else to B tier is like maybe a little too reactionary. I think they're going to come back really hard.
Their next
Um,
game's at Boston in 2 weeks.
like I just if I'm Boston, I'm the like, the like Ralph Wiggins, like I'm in danger meme. Like that's Boston right now. Like
Wow.
we
I think if I'm Boston, I am like bloodthirsty.
Oh yeah, I'm
Like I'm
salivating if I'm
I
Boston right now.
Babbitt's revenge game. They just lost. Like they're beatable. I think if I'm Boston, I'm like sitting in a dark basement listening to loud music for the next 2 weeks to just like make myself insane for this game.
well, if you
Yeah,
think
I'm
that's
with
what
you.
they're doing, we talked to Ryan Anderson because we had Ryan Anderson, the trainer from the Empire
Yeah, I
on.
saw that. That's good.
And I asked him, I was like, he's been on the Empire for the entirety of their streak.
Hmm.
So he hasn't lost a game with the Empire since he's been working there. And so I was like, how are you gonna emotionally like cope with a loss? Like you don't even that's never happened to you before in your like professional career. Like what's the team's response gonna be? And he was like, I'm gonna be devastated. B, like we're gonna come back and we're going to be like bloodthirsty. Like there's like we will never ever like want that again, basically. So like I feel like it'll be a wake up call to lose a game, and I don't know. I don't want to doubt the Empire. I don't want to be the one that doubted the Empire, and then they just go and just go on some crazy run. They could still be the champions this year. Like they really could with their personnel. I know they have a lot of changes, but I really think they still could. So putting them in B tier feels kind of disrespectful, honestly. But that's just me.
I guess it like depends on what you think this tier list is. Is it us saying this is this team for the whole rest of the season, or are we saying this is how this team has played so far?
Do you think we know what this tier list is?
No,
No, that's a
No.
good
I think
question.
it's what is I think it's what does it mean to you right now in this moment? That can change every day.
To
Yeah.
me, what the tier list is, it's how good are these teams actually? in comparison to each other. And we are trying to read the tea leaves every week and figure that out because it's not always, we're doing transitive property. We don't know, not every team's played games yet.
So
Cough,
it's like
cough,
somewhat
alley
of a
cats.
power rankings, but like a little less rigid where we're not necessarily assigning a number. It's like you have the freedom to put them in a tier. And if they're like slightly out of order in that tier, it's less important than like a power rankings where you would actually have to like give them a number.
I think you could make it a power, like I think we are thinking about where they are in relation to other teams in the tier, but like it's not as big of a deal, but like top of the tier and bottom of the tier, I think is like a big distinction.
Gotcha. Okay.
For sure.
What
But
if I threw out the idea that the Empire could very easily be 500 this year?
that's crazy.
Can I paint you a picture? Can I
Please
Oh
convince
my
do.
you?
Please,
Please
please
do.
do,
gosh.
Try to
please do.
convince. Can I try to convince the ringer of the pod of this? Okay.
Oh my
I
gosh.
think you've already convinced two of us.
I don't know why you guys aren't afraid of the bad man. The bad man is coming and they are
Bad man
I
is
guess
in Boston.
the bad man's on Boston, I guess, but I'll hear you out, Cam. I'll hear you out.
Okay. So first off, let's look at their schedule. So they're already 1-1, right? They have 10 more games left. Of those 10 games, um, they have an at home and an away against Boston. They have a home and away against the Breeze. They have a home game against Salt Lake. They have a game at Minnesota, and they have and I'm not even going to say the other games. Those are all the games that I think are losable for them, right? So we have two DC, two Boston, Salt Lake, Minnesota, right? That is 6 opportunities to potentially lose a game. They have 2 games against Philly, unless Philly just like, I don't know. Philly's going to have to show me something for me to even think they're going to beat anyone in their division at this point because what we saw was really bad. They also have to go up to Montreal, a team that they barely beat at home. Like, that seems like a game they could lose. Montreal has one of the best home crowds also in the entire UFA. So it's very possible they go up there to 1,500 to 2,000 people in the stands.
I mean, they might have the best home crowd, but they didn't win a game last year with that crowd.
Sure. They also have a completely different roster this year.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
no team got better this year than like improved more than Montreal. Their roster overhaul is pretty insane. I think we saw it in the first 2 games where they were missing an important piece and still very competitive. Um, so anyways, you have all those games, right? Their offense is broken. I said this on Swing Pass. It's up now if you want to go like listen to it. But like I could even go further into it. But like their offense is broken. Their offense, one of the reasons it was so good before, like Ryan Osgar was like the engine to that vehicle. Like he was the most important part because he was the most interchangeable between upfield and downfield. He's the best high volume. He's not only the best deep thrower in the game, he's also like the highest volume deep thrower in the game. So like he's the best and does it at an incredibly high rate. Um, you also have to think about like how all these pieces work together. So what they had before with Lithiow and Babbitt and Osgar, included with the other 4 who are still there, was that all these guys could kind of pick their spots. So like Jeff Babbitt, he wasn't touching the disc 30 times a game, right? Like Jeff Babbitt would make he'd make like essentially 15 cuts for the whole game. But those 15 cuts, like he doesn't have to do more than that because he's got Jack Williams, he's got Ryan Osgar, he's got Solomon Richmeyer Bailey, he's got like they're all just like they all just get to pick their spots. What you're seeing now without Osgar, without Babbitt, without Lithiow, which by the way, Lithiow was one of their best players on that line in terms of just like being able to adapt to the situation. Like he could go in a game where he's a deep threat, he could go in a game and make 50 throws. Now what you have is like Jack has to be way more involved in everything because he's the only person who can get open upfield. Ben Yacht looks cooked. Like he can't win a disc in the air against anyone so far in the 2 games they've played. He can't get open anywhere dangerous. His biggest plays have come defensively. He hasn't made like any plays on offense that are your normal Ben Yacht plays. Liam Haberfield is supposed to be the replacement for Oscar, but the problem is Liam Haberfield is not the cutter that Oscar is, and he is not the precision passer that Oscar is. He has a huge arm. He can probably throw the disc as far as anyone on that team and further than Ryan Oscar can, but he does not have the pinpoint accuracy. He also doesn't have the ability to like work it in the short game as well as Oscar. Like Oscar can go into a game and throw it 60 times and he gets the disc moving so quickly. Haberfield, when he gets it, he's holding on to it. He's looking for these big throws, but he's not making the decisions as quick. He's not the engine of the entire offense. Like they can't replace that. Jack Williams looked exhausted at the end of that Atlanta game. He had like 56 throws or something like that in that game. And he's just like not able to go stretch downfield as much because he has to be near the disc. And when he did try to go stretch downfield, I don't know if it's because he's getting older or out of shape, or honestly, it's probably just because he had to do so much throughout the rest of the game. He's like not able to create separation. Like there was a deep throw to him where Burnett was like, I don't know, a few steps behind him and halfway towards the like as they're running towards the disc, like the disc isn't even like they're not even near the disc yet. They're just like 20 yards away from it. And Burnett like already caught up and overtook him, and Jack just like stopped running. Like they're they have to switch John Randolph over to offense because they have nobody on that O line who is athletic enough and fast enough to just get open. It's bad. Like it is really, really bad. And even the other guys like Solomon Rushmire Bailey, who basically played a perfect championship weekend in 2022 and has looked like the most steady handler in the league at times, like looks shaken. Like like he's making bad throws. I just it's all so bad. In 2 games so far, their offense just looks so bad. They replaced those guys with Sean Keegan, who's old and not fast and explosive and isn't going to provide pop up the field, with Liam Haberfield, who I think can be good for them, but he's just the unfortunate thing he's running into is being compared to Ryan Oscar. And
Mhm.
like that's not a fair comparison, but unfortunately, those are the shoes you're stepping into when you're coming in after this guy is stepping away. And Ben Yacht, who looks like the cockiness and bravado is gone. Like, I don't know what happened this offseason, but it's just like he doesn't look. Where is the arrogance that he plays with all the time? Like that cockiness that like he's gonna do something and you just can't stop him. Like, where is the guy who just torched DC's defense in the playoffs last year? It's like we snapped our fingers and then he's gone. And I'm wondering if part of that is just like they don't have all these athletic threats all over the field anymore. It's a lot easier to key in and just be like, I'm just gonna key in on my matchup and we can even help over the top. Like a couple of times Yacht's been thrown deep to a second person's helping off because they don't have to worry about who they're guarding because that person's not going to go do anything. So it's just like with their D line didn't even really generate that much pressure against Atlanta. I mean, that's supposed to be the thing that's supposed to be steady, but their D line's only breaking at a 19% rate through 2 games. It's one of the worst in the league. I mean, there's a lot going on here. And they have to play all these tough games. Like, you think they're going to be anywhere close to Salt Lake in that game right now, the way they look? That game's going to be a blowout, like the way it looks right now. You think they can go into a game against Minnesota, who has one of the stingiest defenses in the league? We even saw what they did to Salt Lake at championship weekend last year. You think they're going to be able to go into Minnesota, into Seafoam Stadium, or I think they're actually playing at TCO Stadium again, where they're going to have that swirling wind. You think they're going to do anything against that defense? Like, I, I don't see it. And DC, who didn't look amazing in their first game, but like but played decently well against Salt Lake. I think they're just going to keep getting better, and I don't see New York hanging with them either, especially if they have a full roster. I just
Yeah, I think that's really well put. I
sorry,
think
I
one
went
of
Damn.
really long there. Sorry.
I think one of the least talked about issues with losing Osgar and Babbitt is you go from and Lithio, you go from having Jack Williams having the third or fourth best defender guarding him to now he has the best defender guarding him. And you go from that, you know, fourth worst, fourth best defender guarding somebody like Lithio or somebody like Williams. It's now guarding like Weinberg, who's not bad, but that means you have a lot more ability to go help over on that big if you're not like worried about what Jack Williams is doing because
Mm-hmm.
your number 1 and number 2 don't have to guard Oscar and Babbitt anymore. You're guarding Williams and I don't know, Haverfield.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Damn. Definitely we should clip that whole
The rant.
evisceration. Yeah. That was crazy. And that's going up on all of our socials after this.
And well, we have to stick with B tier after that because
Yeah.
unless we have
I'm convinced.
a rant to
I mean,
go
I,
back
I'm
to put them back in A.
I'm saying below Cats or C tier after I'm
Yeah,
convinced.
after that, we're talking
maybe
Corpus tier.
E for Empire tier.
Oh.
Oh man,
Yeah, no, I think top of B for now is more than valid, but wow, that was
that was hard to listen to.
that was convincing. That was
Yeah.
convincing, if nothing
Yeah.
else.
That was really just like a eulogy for what the Empire have been.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do think I don't know. I think those personnel shakeups, based on what you said, Cam, it really seems like it was a domino effect. It's more than that team with all those players is like much greater than the sum of its parts, and then you take it away, and then it's you know, you
Just a
lose.
team.
Yeah, you just lose like all these things that worked so well. Like, but I don't know. Then the other argument is like, this is a team with really good coaching. They can make adjustments. Like, I
They're
believe
down
in
a
that.
coach. Don't forget that. They are down a coach.
Yeah, but they got Nunez in there. He's cooking something up, I'm sure. Like, I don't know. I have faith that they'll figure it out. But yeah, you've more than convinced me to have them in B for now. So I'm okay with that. Um, we should probably get to Ryan's line soon. Is there any other
Yeah,
movement?
we got some more. We got to make sure we touch on everyone. So
Uh,
Atlanta, do we want them to be higher than bottom A after their performance?
I
So why is Minnesota like so high? Like higher than these guys?
I don't know.
we haven't talked about Minnesota. They didn't play this week, but
They had one
they
game this year. They beat
Yeah.
Pittsburgh. That's
they
it.
handled Pittsburgh like Pittsburgh didn't get a single break in the game. Uh,
I think Atlanta played themselves into being higher than Minnesota.
I
Sure.
won't
think that
argue.
I don't care. I mean, I think Minnesota could very well become better than them, but I guess they just
Yeah,
haven't done
we
anything
haven't
yet.
seen it
So
yet.
I don't mind.
they just
Yeah.
beat Pittsburgh, and that's kind of it, which is
Yeah.
good. They're A. A is good. A is A.
A is A.
Yeah.
And
I'll
we like
take it.
Soul.
Uh,
We like Soul over Hustle because Hustle still kind of lost to Carolina, and Soul looked really good. They've done what they need to do.
I think so. And I mean,
I
last time
don't
we saw
care.
them, the Soul beat them in the playoffs. So if we're going to say
Yeah.
tiebreaker goes to that.
Yeah, it's a toss up for sure, but I think them being at least next to each other is like valid.
Yeah. I
Um,
think the last thing to touch on would be our B tier. I wish Cam's video was working so we could get a
My
preseason opinion on the Cats, but
yeah. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. My camera's my Zoom is like freaking out right now. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. I noticed.
So I might actually. You know what? I'm gonna close the call out and rejoin.
okay, cool. Well, let's do some crazy shit while he's gone.
Let's
think
move Alley Cats down to Gorpus.
No, I simply won't allow it.
B tier Cats, that's your whole thing, isn't it?
A tier Cats, baby.
Oh, I'm an S tier Cats. I mean, if I had my way, you know how I
No,
feel.
that's too much for me.
Well,
I'm comfortable with A tier. Yeah, Summit won, Glory won, Union won, Seattle went 1-1.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
I don't know what you really do with that,
Yeah, Summit beat Seattle, but like you guys said, it was a win by 4, so it was comfortable enough, but it wasn't like a team outclassing another team, especially with Seattle being on a back-to-back.
Mm-hmm. I think if anything, it just makes Seattle's case that they deserve to be in B.
Yeah, they probably belong in that tier. This B tier is kind of cool because it's teams that like still might be really good. I feel like in years past, it's been like the B tier was like teams that we wish were good, but just aren't gonna be. And then this group, it's like they actually could, like Summit could go and win the West, you know?
Yeah.
Like
I think
they
there's
won't probably, but they could.
I just have kind of felt that there's more parity in the league. I mean, we've seen some blowouts, don't get me wrong, but like this top like B and up, um, these are all
Yeah,
good
there's
teams.
a lot of good
Uh,
teams. Yeah.
If any of these teams are playing each other, like I'm tuning in, like I'm interested in watching that, you know.
I kind of like the order it's in right now.
I
I
kind
don't
of do
know
too.
that if the Union should be bumped up or if we
No,
don't think beating Detroit is enough.
that is nothing for me.
The thing is, I think was advocating last week that they're better than C tier,
Mm.
but I think if we're saying last week they're C tier, I also don't think that's enough to bump them up. I think I just personally have them as higher than that. But can we move the Rascals just to the? They haven't played yet, and they were dog shit last year.
Oh, you hate when they haven't played. That's your
They haven't
big beef
played.
with them
You know what? I hate that
from
too.
the
I hate that
beginning.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. Can we just move them to the
I
end? Like,
support
yeah.
it. I
I,
support
I
it.
I remember the start of us hating that was like Chicago. I think the first time we started doing this podcast, it was like week 5 or 6, and they played like one game, and we were
I
so
think the
mad at them.
Growlers
It
too.
was
I think we like
Growlers,
saw,
yeah.
yeah.
I
They
was
were like,
so
it's
mad
like
about
3 weeks away. Yeah.
that.
I
Was
still
that
hate the
was
Growlers
whack.
because of that.
I will never forget them. Uh,